Hi everyone, my name's Edwin. I'm really interested in personal effectiveness and problem solving, specifically using the work of David Deutsch and more broader the philosophy of critical rationalism. And today we're going to talk about understanding and the different types of knowledge we can understand. At the heart of David Deutsch's worldview is that humans are special because we are universal explainers. We can understand explanations of what the world does and form our own explanations, create knowledge in this way. And an explanation is a description of how something works and why it works that way. It really goes into the mechanism of it. And while we have these good explanations that we can form, we also still have a different type of knowledge that we often use or fall back on, which is factual knowledge. And factual knowledge is knowledge that just works, but we take it for granted why. We just see that it gives us the desired results. We do not care how or why it works. It's more like a quick hack we can use as like a tool to get something we want. And in this video, I want to compare those two types of knowledge and hopefully convince you why explanatory knowledge is the better one to always strive to learn and to replace your factual knowledge with. And to do so, we're going to cover three things. We're going to cover the difference in quality between factual knowledge and explanatory knowledge. And we're going to cover the difference in efficiency in using the knowledge. And lastly, we're going to go over some of the benefits of having an explanatory worldview. Let's start with the quality aspect. And to illustrate those differences, we're going to cover a statement phrased as a fact and another alternative statement that is phrased as an explanation and see where those differences lie. And the statement we're going to cover is about how much of your income you should save. And the factual statement is put 20% of your income aside as savings. And the explanation is try to save 4 months of monthly expenses so that you have a buffer in case you lose your income. All right, now let's look at the differences. Firstly, we'll look at the accuracy. Well, it's not really clear where the fact for who it's meant or when it's accurate. It's just 20% of our income, but it doesn't say how much income that is. It doesn't specify if we have a second income in the household, how high that income must be before that's not any more relevant rule of thumb. Is it possible to infer who is meant for and if it's applicable for your situation? And the other one is, of course, more precise because that specifies what is the key variable, namely maintaining 4 months of living expenses. That's what you're aiming for. It's not just an arbitrary percentage of your income. So it's a lot more specific and accurate, and that also allows you to understand if it's precise for you. That brings us to also improvability. The first fact, it just says do this, and you only have 2 ways to figure out if it's not working for you, and both are not ideal. First of all, what you can do is see when it fails. So when you notice, oh damn, 20% is actually was not enough, I'm in trouble now, I don't have enough savings. So then it's already basically too late. You can error correct, of course, at that point and up your percentage some more, but typically it's a very inefficient way to go about it. And the second thing you could do is, well, maybe more is better, but you would never know like how much to increase it because you're not forecasting what circumstances might occur because it's not specified in the fact. Okay, now obviously contrasting that with an explanation, it's much easier to improve because it's saying we're going to aim for the outcome of 4 months of living expenses in savings. You can also then reflect, hey, how can this be improved for my situation? For instance, some people might have a very stable job. In that case, 4 months of expenses is a lot. They can reduce it to 2 months maybe because there's very high demand for their role, so they'll find a new job quickly. And other people might have a very volatile income if you're doing project-based work or freelance work. Yeah, then sometimes you also don't have a job for 1 or 2 months, and you don't want to then be digging into your emergency fund buffer. So in that case, it might be smart to actually aim for 6 months of living expenses worth of savings. Okay, now let's move on to the last property that we're going to examine, namely the range of applicability. Again, the fact just states 20% of your income saved, and that is good. It doesn't say why it's good and in what circumstances it's good. So it only will apply to income because it's been phrased as advice for income, so that's what you have to go with. Whereas the explanation, it gives again the mechanism and it gives the reason why you're doing it. You want to have a rainy day fund, a buffer for 4 months of living expenses, and that doesn't have to be just living expenses. That could have applicability also in business. For instance, commercial enterprises often have client loss or have to be at a standstill because of some catastrophe in logistics, and then having a buffer is also a great idea. Governments might adopt the same principle. The explanation has a wider range of words applicable for because of this explanatory component, whereas the fact doesn't give this clarity. So now we've compared the quality differences between explanations and facts, and it's quite clear that an explanation is more versatile and less prone to make mistakes, and also more efficient to adjust when a mistake does happen. So in terms of quality, it definitely wins. Now let's look at efficiency. At first glance, you might think, oh, efficiency is definitely where factual knowledge will shine, because facts don't require you to understand it. It is just blindly follow it, and good things will happen. In certain circumstances, this is true. For instance, if you're dealing with very trivial or mechanical tasks where an understanding of it is really not important, you just have to get it over with, then facts are actually a very nice tool because they allow us to take action quickly without overthinking. However, for important decisions, then actually facts are not efficient because, first of all, facts, as we know, will lead to more errors because our quality is lower. And when you make an error, you will have to address that error later on, and fixing an error later on is a lot less efficient than getting it right the first time, or at least close to right the first time. So in terms of time and attention spent, the fact will be less efficient. The second property that makes facts less efficient than explanations is how they are stored. So if you need to understand more and more facts, the set of information you have to understand just accumulates. It's always growing. It's just more facts, more tools, more hacks, all in a tool belt that you need to carry around, basically memorizing encyclopedias. And this is just very inefficient, and so inefficient that basically you will always have gaps in your knowledge if you rely on facts, because there's just no way you'll know enough about the complexity of modern day life when you do it with facts. And therefore, if you have gaps in your knowledge, you'll again make more mistakes and lead to this less efficient approach. Whereas explanations have this interesting property where a good explanation will subsume multiple explanations. So therefore, understanding one explanation has a much wider reach of what it can cover and what you can understand with it, and is therefore way more efficient to store. An example would be a mechanic who's working in a workshop and they need to fix engines on a lot of different cars from a lot of different brands. The factual way he could go about it is read the manual of every engine and memorize it by heart. But the explanatory way to do that would be just to understand how an engine works. What are the key components? What do they do? Just understanding that machine is a lot more efficient as opposed to memorizing literally how every single one of them works. Of course, there is little details and variations between models, and their factual knowledge will be helpful to have. But overall, having an explanatory understanding of the system is much more efficient. Another simple example is learning math multiplication tables. Yes, you could memorize every single table and therefore apply the knowledge when you need it, but that is vastly more inefficient than just simply coming up with an explanation or understanding why multiplication works this way. And of course, this then has reach beyond just multiplication tables. If you understand why it works, you will also understand that how computer languages work more efficiently, and therefore you'll have some knowledge on how to apply that to computers. Whereas if you just memorize multiplication tables, that has no reach beyond just being able to fill in the test that you have to do at school. And the last part is we're going to examine the benefits of having an explanatory worldview, other than just making less errors and being more efficient with problem solving. And the first one is being able to filter and search information more efficiently. So if you have already an understanding of how the world works, and for instance, also how it doesn't work. In the last video, we covered the limits of reality, or like what are the things that are truly impossible in reality. If we know those and we come across a theory or a bit of information that claims to oppose this or to violate what we know are the limits of reality, we can immediately put it aside and focus instead on a source that doesn't violate this principle or doesn't violate these explanations. So having an explanatory worldview helps you traverse information more efficiently because you're not just starting from scratch, but you understand already some things and you're just seeing how that fits into your worldview. Obviously, your worldview contains still very many errors, so you shouldn't just assume that everything you already know is good. But if you have this habit of thinking through explanations and really understanding them deeply, then definitely that is a strong reference point for new information that comes in. The second benefit is applying first principle thinking in situations where you maybe don't know anything yet about a subject. If you rely on facts, then you have to know everything about everything. And if you don't know something, you have no idea where to start. You have to wing it in that way. But if you have an explanatory worldview, you likely have some strong explanations or fundamental explanations that you can fall back on to build your understanding of this domain, and therefore also construct solutions for this problem, for a problem that you may be facing in this domain. A recent example of first principle thinking that was popularized was Elon Musk when he started SpaceX and Tesla. So instead of working from the body of knowledge, largely facts of the previous system, of the incumbents in the industry, he decided to start from first principles, namely the deep explanations about how physics work and how the economics of manufacturing work, and to really understand all of that at a deep level, and then build the system and the businesses based on that, as opposed to accepting the general consensus, accepting the bottlenecks that the current industry had, and then just having to work around that. No, because he started from these explanations, he was able to make greater gains in efficiency and obviously grow these companies to be hugely successful. And the third benefit of having an explanatory worldview is that you can adjust it when new information comes in. When you rely on facts, for instance, like a diet plan, you're just following a diet because your trainer said so, and let's say it doesn't work. What options do you have? Basically, you can just discard it and try a new one because you don't understand why it's supposed to be working or what it's even meant to be doing. You're only following this fact, and perhaps you could ask your trainer, and the trainer might give you then another fact, and then you have to follow that. And often what then happens is you try multiple prescriptions, you try multiple tools, tricks, methods, and just throw them away if they don't work. That's really an inefficient way to go about things. And if you had an explanation for why the diet works, for instance, you know how much calories you're eating and that hopefully that is below your maintenance value, and you're eating your food at a specific time so you won't get as hungry. If you know all of those variables and those explanations, then if it doesn't work, you have something to play with. You understand, oh, I'm not actually losing enough weight. Maybe I need to eat a little bit less. And then you know exactly how much you can fine tune because you understand how the calories work, etc. And the same goes for meal timing. If you just notice, oh damn, I'm just constantly hungry, play around with that. If you had a fact, those options would not be easy to find. It would just be winging it. You could still try those things, but you don't know what you're manipulating. You're just trying things that you don't know if it will work or not. Again, vastly more inefficient. So I hope to have convinced you of the merits of having this explanatory worldview. If you found this video helpful and want to understand more about explanations versus facts and like optimizing your own life to revolve around good explanations, I recommend signing up for my book, The 4 Acts, which is a method for problem solving based on our best explanations for how the mind works and how the world works. Of course, again, derived largely from Karl Popper's epistemology and David Deutsch's worldview. And if you want to know a little bit more broadly about critical rationalism and the fields related to it, I can recommend the Conjecture Institute. As always, links to all of that will be in the description below. And thanks for watching. See you next time.